The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, a sea of darkness dotted with stars that twinkled like tiny diamonds. In the far reaches of this cosmic ocean, something stirred. A fleet of massive ships emerged from the depths of hyperspace, their metallic hulls gleaming faintly under the light of distant suns. These were not ordinary vessels. They belonged to the Zorathian Empire, a civilization known across galaxies for its ruthlessness and hunger for conquest. At the helm of this armada stood General Cale Vorn, a towering figure clad in dark armor, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon of his command deck. Cale was a seasoned warrior, a leader who had crushed countless civilizations in the name of the Empire. His reputation preceded him, and his soldiers followed him without question. This time, their target was Earth, a small blue-green planet nestled in a quiet corner of the Milky Way. To the Zorathians, it seemed insignificant, a primitive world, with no interstellar capabilities or advanced defenses. Their mission was clear: conquer, extract resources, and eliminate any resistance. The Empire needed new territories to fuel its expansion, and Earth was ripe for the taking. Unbeknownst to Cale and his fleet, humanity had been watching them long before they arrived. Decades earlier, scientists on Earth had detected unusual energy signatures deep in space, signs of intelligent life beyond their solar system. Fearing the worst, governments around the globe pooled their resources to prepare for potential threats. They built an intricate network of satellites, developed cutting-edge weapons, and trained elite pilots to defend their home. The people of Earth knew they were outmatched in terms of numbers and technology, but they refused to go down without a fight. At NORAD, a high-security military base buried deep within the Rocky Mountains, alarms blared as technicians monitored the incoming fleet. Daniel Carter, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a calm demeanor, stood at the center of the chaos. He was a military strategist, a man who had spent years planning for scenarios exactly like this one. Beside him sat Dr. Laura Bennett, a brilliant physicist whose work on quantum weaponry had revolutionized Earth's defense systems. Her presence was a reassurance to everyone in the room, even though her expression betrayed a hint of worry. President Hayes entered the command center, his tall frame cutting through the tension like a knife. He nodded at Daniel and Laura before, addressing the assembled officers. "This is it," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We've prepared for this day, and now it's here. Operation Eclipse is our only chance." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed his words. Humanity's survival depended on what happened next. Meanwhile, aboard the lead battleship of the Zorathian fleet, Cale Vorn addressed his crew with unwavering confidence. "This will be quick," he declared, his voice echoing through the ship's communication system. "Their technology is primitive, their defenses laughable. We will crush them before they even realize we are here." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Soren, nodded in agreement, though a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Something about the scans of Earth didn't sit right with him, but he dismissed it as nerves. After all, the Empire had never faced a challenge it couldn't overcome. Back on Earth, ordinary citizens went about their lives, unaware of the storm brewing above them. In Chicago, a young woman named Emily Dawson sipped coffee at a cafe while scrolling through news headlines on her phone. She was a fighter pilot, one of the best in the world, but today she was just another face in the crowd. Across town, Ryan Mitchell, a rugged man with a quick smile and quicker reflexes, tinkered with his motorcycle in the garage of his modest apartment. Both Emily and Ryan were part of the elite squadron tasked with defending Earth, but neither had received the call to action yet. As the alien fleet drew closer, Earth's orbital satellites sprang to life. Their sensors tracked every movement of the invaders, feeding data back to NORAD in real time. Daniel studied the information carefully, his brow furrowing as he analyzed the size and composition of the fleet. "They're bigger than we thought," he muttered to Laura. "But we can still do this." Laura nodded, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she adjusted the targeting parameters for the satellite's plasma cannons. The first sign of trouble came when the Zorathians broadcast a message to Earth. It was a simple demand for surrender, delivered in broken English. President Hayes listened intently, his jaw tightening with each word. When the transmission ended, he turned to Daniel. "What's our response?" Daniel hesitated for a moment before answering. "We don't negotiate with invaders," he said firmly. "Let them see what we're made of." Within minutes, Earth's automated defense systems swung into action. Swarms of drones surged toward the alien fleet, their sleek forms glinting in the sunlight. Armed with hypersonic missiles and laser-guided precision, they unleashed a barrage of attacks that caught the Zorathians completely off guard. Explosions lit up the void as ships exploded in fiery bursts, sending shockwaves rippling through space. On board the Zorath, Kale watched in disbelief as his forces struggled to respond. "How is this possible?" he growled, slamming his fist against the console. Down on Earth, Emily and Ryan received their orders. Within moments, they were suited up and climbing into their advanced fighter jets. The hangar buzzed with activity as ground crews scrambled to prepare the aircraft for launch. As Emily strapped herself in, she glanced at Ryan's plane parked beside hers. "Ready for this?" she called out over the comms. "Born ready," he replied with a grin. Their engines roared to life, and seconds later, they shot into the sky, joining the battle already underway. High above the planet, the dogfight intensified. Alien fighters darted between debris fields, firing beams of energy at anything that moved. Emily and Ryan led their squadrons with precision, weaving through the chaos like dancers in a deadly ballet. Holographic displays inside their cockpits provided real-time updates on enemy positions, allowing them to anticipate attacks and strike back with devastating accuracy. "Stay sharp," Ryan shouted over the comms as a volley of missiles streaked past his wing. "We can't afford to lose focus." Beneath the surface, Laura and her team worked tirelessly to maintain control of the orbital satellites. Each successful hit boosted morale, but the strain was beginning to show. Sweat dripped down Laura's forehead as she recalibrated the targeting algorithms, ensuring that every shot counted. Nearby, Daniel coordinated with field commanders, relaying instructions and adjusting strategies based on the evolving situation. Despite the pressure, both remained focused, knowing that failure was not an option. As the battle raged on, cracks began to form in the Zorathian ranks. Morale plummeted as more and more ships were destroyed, their crews obliterated in the blink of an eye. Lieutenant Soren approached Kale, his face pale with fear. "Sir, we're losing too many ships," he stammered. "Perhaps we should reconsider our strategy." Kale glared at him, his patience wearing thin. "Reconsider? No. We adapt and crush them harder," he snapped. With renewed determination, he ordered his flagship to unleash its most powerful weapon, a devastating beam designed to obliterate entire cities. The beam lanced toward Earth, heading straight for New York City. Panic gripped the streets as civilians fled for cover, but unknown to the Zorathians, Earth's orbital satellites had one last trick up their sleeve. Just moments before impact, the satellites intercepted the beam, redirecting its energy harmlessly into space. Back on the Zorath, Kale's confidence wavered for the first time. "What sorcery is this?" he demanded, his voice trembling with rage. For the first time since the invasion began, doubt crept into his mind. On the ground, the mood shifted. Civilians cheered as news spread of the successful interception, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that humanity was holding its own. Soldiers fought with renewed vigor, inspired by the resilience of their leaders and the ingenuity of their scientists. Even as the battle continued to unfold, there was a sense of hope in the air, a belief that Earth could withstand whatever the invaders threw at them. In the command center, President Hayes placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You've done well," he said quietly. "But this isn't over yet." Daniel nodded, his eyes fixed on the monitors displaying the ongoing conflict. "No, sir," he replied. "It's just the beginning." The battle in space raged on, a chaotic dance of fire and steel as Earth's defenses clashed with the Zorathian fleet. Explosions lit up the void, casting eerie shadows across the faces of those watching from below. In NORAD, Daniel Carter leaned over a console, his eyes scanning the data streams pouring in from satellites and drones. Each piece of information painted a clearer picture of the enemy's strengths and weaknesses. Beside him, Dr. Laura Bennett worked tirelessly, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she fine-tuned the targeting systems for the orbital weapons. Her mind raced with calculations, ensuring every shot was precise and efficient. President Hayes stood nearby, his arms crossed as he observed the unfolding conflict. He had seen crises before, but nothing compared to this. The fate of humanity rested on decisions made in this room, and the weight of that responsibility pressed heavily on him. "How are we holding up?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with urgency. Daniel glanced at him briefly before returning his focus to the monitors. "We're doing better than expected," he replied. "Their numbers are dropping, but they still outnumber us." Laura chimed in without looking up. "And their flagship hasn't taken any significant damage yet." The Zorathian flagship, the Zorath, loomed like a dark cloud in the sky. It was massive, its jagged edges resembling the claws of some ancient beast. General Cale Vorn paced the command deck, his frustration growing with each passing moment. His forces were struggling against an enemy they had underestimated, and it infuriated him. "This isn't possible," he muttered under his breath. Lieutenant Soren stood nearby, his face pale and his hands trembling slightly. "Sir, perhaps we need to reassess our strategy," he suggested cautiously. Cale turned on him, his eyes blazing with anger. "Reassess? No! We adapt and crush them harder," he snapped. Back on Earth, the fight extended beyond the skies. News of the invasion spread quickly, and cities around the globe braced for impact. Civilians were evacuated to underground bunkers, while emergency broadcasts urged people to remain calm. In Los Angeles, Sergeant Megan Cole led her unit through the streets, preparing for whatever might come next. She was a no-nonsense woman, with sharp features and a commanding presence. Her team trusted her implicitly, knowing she would do whatever it took to keep them alive. "Stay alert," she barked, her voice cutting through the tension. "If they land troops, we hit them hard and fast." In Chicago, Emily Dawson and Ryan Mitchell continued their aerial assault, leading squadrons of pilots in dogfights against the alien fighters. Their jets streaked through the sky, weaving between debris fields and launching missiles with pinpoint accuracy. Inside their cockpits, holographic displays provided real-time updates on enemy positions, allowing them to anticipate attacks and strike back effectively. "Watch your six!" Ryan shouted over the comms as an alien fighter swooped in, behind Emily. She rolled her jet just in time, narrowly avoiding a blast of energy. "Got it," she replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Meanwhile, Laura and her team faced challenges of their own. The orbital satellites were powerful, but they required constant adjustments to maintain optimal performance. Every explosion in space sent shockwaves rippling through the network, threatening to knock the delicate instruments out of alignment. Laura wiped sweat from her brow as she recalibrated the targeting algorithms, her focus unwavering. Nearby, technicians scrambled to repair damaged components, their movements quick and precise. Despite the pressure, there was a sense of unity. In the room, a shared determination to protect their planet. As the hours passed, the tide of the battle began to shift. The Zorathians, though formidable, were not invincible. Their ships were slower and less maneuverable than Earth's advanced drones and fighter jets. Alien fighters fell one by one, their wreckage drifting silently through space. On board the Zorath, Cale watched the carnage unfold, his confidence wavering further. "What are they using?" he demanded, slamming his fist against the console. "How can they have such advanced technology?" Lieutenant Soren hesitated before answering. "Perhaps they've been preparing for this for years," he suggested carefully. Cale glared at him but said nothing, his mind racing with possibilities. On the ground, civilians played a role in the resistance too. In rural areas, farmers armed themselves with rifles and makeshift weapons, ready to defend their homes. Urban centers saw ordinary people band together, forming impromptu militias to protect their neighborhoods. Social media buzzed with messages of solidarity and defiance, inspiring acts of bravery across the globe. Even children contributed, relaying information to local authorities or helping evacuate the elderly and vulnerable. Humanity was fighting back, not just with weapons, but with heart and determination. In NORAD, Daniel updated President Hayes on the progress of the battle. "Their numbers are down by 30%, he reported, a hint of optimism in his voice. "But their flagship is still operational, and it's heavily armed." President Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "Can we target it directly?" he asked. Daniel hesitated, before replying. Not yet. It's shielded, and we don't have the firepower to penetrate it, Laura interjected, her tone measured. Unless we use Project Titan, she said quietly. The room fell silent at the mention of the classified weapon hidden beneath Antarctica. Project Titan was Earth's ultimate ace in the hole, a massive energy weapon capable of vaporizing entire fleets. Its development had been shrouded in secrecy, known only to a select few. Laura had overseen much of the project herself, pouring years of research into perfecting its design. But using it came with risks. If misused, it could destabilize Earth's atmosphere or trigger catastrophic side effects. It's risky, Daniel admitted, but if we don't act now, they'll regroup and hit us harder. President Hayes stared at the monitors for a long moment before making his decision. Prepare it, he said firmly. We can't afford to wait. Laura and her team sprang into action, rushing to activate Project Titan. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, engineers worked around the clock to bring the weapon online. It was a race against time as the Zorathians began to adapt to Earth's tactics. General Kale ordered his remaining ships to form a defensive perimeter around the Zorath, shielding it from further attacks. At the same time, he prepared to deploy ground troops, hoping to gain a foothold on the planet's surface. We will crush them from within, he declared, his voice filled with renewed determination. Back in the skies, Emily and Ryan noticed a change in the enemy's behavior. Instead of focusing solely on space combat, alien dropships began descending toward Earth. They carried hundreds of soldiers, equipped with advanced weaponry and armor. They're landing troops, Ryan announced over the comms. Repeat, they're landing troops. The news spread quickly, reaching military commanders and civilian leaders alike. Sergeant Megan Cole tightened her grip on her rifle as she received orders to engage the invaders. Time to show them what we're made of, she muttered to her team. The first wave of alien troops touched down near major cities, their movements coordinated and efficient. In Los Angeles, Megan and her unit ambushed a group of invaders, catching them off guard with a barrage of gunfire. The aliens fought back fiercely, their energy weapons cutting through buildings and vehicles. Smoke filled the air as explosions rocked the streets, turning the city into a war zone. Civilians cowered in shelters, praying for the fighting to end. Despite the chaos, Megan's team held their ground, taking out alien soldiers one by one. Keep moving, she shouted, reloading her weapon. Don't let them pin us down. Similar scenes played out in other cities around the world. Urban combat units, trained specifically for situations like this, engaged the invaders with relentless ferocity. Portable EMP devices disabled alien equipment, while cloaking technology allowed soldiers to strike from unexpected angles. Civilians joined the fight, where they could, using whatever tools were available to resist the occupation. Together they formed a united front, determined to defend their homes at all costs. As night fell, the battle showed no signs of slowing. Fires burned in the distance, casting an orange glow over the horizon. Exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone involved, but there was no time to rest. Humanity had shown its strength, its resilience, and its refusal to surrender. In NORAD, Daniel watched the monitors closely, his mind racing with strategies. Beside him, Laura monitored the progress of Project Titan, her expression a mix of hope and apprehension. President Hayes stood silently, his gaze fixed on the screens displaying the ongoing conflict. We're not done yet, he said finally. Not by a long shot. In NORAD, Daniel received confirmation that Project Titan was ready for deployment. Targeting data is locked in, Laura announced, her voice tinged with relief. President Hayes stepped forward, his face grim but determined. This is it, he said quietly. Make it count. Daniel nodded, his hand hovering over the activation switch. Activating Titan, he declared, pressing the button. Deep beneath the ice, the weapon roared to life, its energy core pulsing with power. A blinding beam shot skyward, cutting through the atmosphere and heading straight for the Zorathian flagship. On board the Zorath, alarms blared as the crew scrambled to respond. Kyle Vorn stared at the approaching beam, his confidence shattered. Shields up, he shouted, but it was too late. The beam struck the flagship, engulfing it in a brilliant explosion that lit up the night sky. Debris rained down, scattering across the void as the once mighty vessel disintegrated. Below, soldiers and civilians alike watched in awe as the alien fleet began to falter, their morale crushed by the loss of their leader. In the aftermath, Megan and her team regrouped, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. Emily and Ryan landed their jets, greeted by cheers from ground crews. In NORAD, Laura slumped into a chair, exhaustion overtaking her. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, offering a rare smile. "We did it," he said softly. President Hayes looked out the window, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "For now," he replied, "but this isn't the end." The aftermath of the Zorathian flagship's destruction rippled through space and across Earth. The once mighty alien fleet, now leaderless, began to falter as their formations dissolved into chaos. In NORAD, the atmosphere shifted from tension to cautious optimism. Monitors displayed the remnants of the enemy fleet scattering in disarray, their ships either retreating or drifting aimlessly. Laura Bennett leaned back in her chair, her hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline of the past hours began to wear off. "It worked," she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. Daniel Carter stood beside her, his eyes scanning the screens, as he processed the scale of what they had accomplished. "For now," he said quietly. "But we can't let our guard down." President Hayes walked over to a window, staring out at the horizon where faint streaks of dawn were beginning to break through the darkness. His face was etched with exhaustion, but his posture remained firm, his mind already turning to the challenges ahead. "We've won this battle," he said, his tone measured but resolute. "But the war isn't over yet." Laura nodded slowly, her thoughts mirroring his own. "If any of them survive, they'll regroup and come back stronger," she added. Daniel clenched his fists, determination hardening his features. "Then we prepare for that too," he replied. "We've shown them what we're capable of and we'll do it again if we have to." In Los Angeles, Sergeant Megan Cole led her battered team through the smoldering ruins of downtown. Fires still burned in the distance, their smoke mingling with the gray haze of early morning. The streets were eerily quiet now, save for the occasional groan of collapsing debris or the distant wail of emergency sirens. Megan's soldiers moved. Cautiously, their weapons raised as they scanned for any remaining threats. Alex, the young soldier who had fought bravely throughout the night, limped slightly as he followed her lead. His face was smeared with soot, and his uniform bore the marks of close calls, but his eyes reflected a newfound confidence. "Do you think they're gone?" he asked hesitantly. Megan shook her head, her expression grim. "Not all of them," she replied. "Stay alert." As they advanced, Megan noticed strange movements near a collapsed building. At first glance, it seemed like shadows shifting in the dim light, but her instincts screamed otherwise. She signaled for her team to take cover. Her rifle aimed steadily at the source of the disturbance. Suddenly, a group of alien soldiers emerged, their armor scorched and their movements sluggish but still dangerous. They appeared to be regrouping, possibly planning one last stand. Megan's lips curled into a determined smile. "This is it," she muttered under her breath. "Let's finish it." Her team obeyed without hesitation, unleashing a barrage of gunfire that sent the invaders scrambling for cover. The firefight was intense but brief. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, the remaining alien soldiers fell quickly, their bodies crumpling to the ground as Megan's team pressed their advantage. When the dust settled, Megan surveyed the scene, her chest rising and falling with exertion. Around her, her soldiers exchanged weary but triumphant glances. "Good work," she said finally, her voice steady despite her fatigue. "Now let's secure the area and get these civilians to safety." Nearby, survivors began to emerge from hiding, their faces pale but hopeful as they realized the immediate threat had passed. Meanwhile, in the skies above, Emily Dawson and Ryan Mitchell guided their jets toward a nearby airbase for refueling and repairs. Both pilots were exhausted, their bodies aching from hours spent in cramped cockpits, but their spirits soared with the knowledge that they had played a crucial role in humanity's survival. As they landed, ground crews rushed to greet them, offering water and words of gratitude. Emily climbed out of her jet, stretching her stiff limbs as she looked around at the bustling activity. "That was insane," she said to Ryan, who stood nearby, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yeah," he replied with a grin, "but we did it anyway." For a moment, they simply stood there, taking in the reality of what they had achieved. Back aboard the scattered remnants of the Zorathian fleet, panic spread among the surviving crew members. Without their flagship or General Cale Vorn to guide them, their morale crumbled. Many ships attempted to flee, their engines sputtering as they struggled to escape Earth's orbit. Others drifted aimlessly, their systems damaged beyond repair. On one such vessel, Lieutenant Soren sat alone on the command deck, his face buried in his hands. He had never questioned the Empire's invincibility before, but now doubt consumed him. "What have we done?" he muttered, his voice hollow. Around him, the ship creaked and groaned, its hull battered by the debris field left behind by the destroyed flagship. On Earth, efforts to clean up and rebuild began almost immediately. Emergency response teams fanned out across affected cities, tending to the wounded and searching for survivors trapped beneath rubble. Hospitals overflowed with patients, but doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to save as many lives as possible. Volunteers streamed in from unaffected areas, bringing food, water, and supplies to those in need. Social media buzzed with messages of hope and resilience as people shared stories of heroism and unity. Even in the face of devastation, humanity refused to give up. In NORAD, Laura and her team continued to monitor the situation, ensuring that no lingering threats remained. The orbital satellites still tracked every movement in space, feeding data back to the command center in real time. Daniel studied the information carefully, his brow furrowing as he analyzed the behavior of the retreating alien ships. "Some of them are heading toward the outer edges of the solar system," he reported to President Hayes. "They might be trying to regroup or call for reinforcements." Laura nodded thoughtfully. "We need to keep an eye on them," she said. "If they come back, we'll be ready." President Hayes turned to face them, his expression grave. "And what about Project Titan?" he asked. "Can we use it again if we need to?" Laura hesitated before answering. "The weapon is powerful, but using it repeatedly could destabilize Earth's atmosphere," she explained. "We can't rely on it indefinitely." Daniel stepped forward, his voice firm. "Then we focus on strengthening our other defenses," he suggested. "Our drones, satellites, and fighter jets proved effective against them. With some upgrades, we can make them even better." As the hours passed, the world began to settle into a fragile sense of calm. News outlets broadcast updates on the status of the invasion, emphasizing humanity's remarkable success in repelling the attackers. Politicians praised the efforts of soldiers and civilians alike, while scientists urged continued investment in defense technology. In Los Angeles, Megan and her team joined forces with local authorities to restore order to the city. They cleared roads, secured buildings, and helped reunite families separated during the chaos. Despite the destruction surrounding them, there was a sense of hope in the air, a belief that they could rebuild stronger than before. Emily and Ryan, after resting briefly, returned to the skies to patrol for any remaining alien activity. There, jets soared above the planet, scanning for signs of trouble. Though the immediate threat had been neutralized, they knew better than to assume victory was absolute. "Keep your eyes open," Ryan reminded Emily over the comms. "We can't afford to drop our guard." Emily nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Understood," she replied. Together they flew in silence, their presence a reassuring reminder that Earth's defenders were still watching. In the depths of space, the surviving Zorathians plotted their next move. Lieutenant Soren, having assumed temporary command of his ship, gathered his crew to discuss their options. "We've failed," he admitted bitterly, "but we can't return to the Empire empty-handed." One of his officers spoke up hesitantly. "Perhaps we should gather intelligence on their defenses," he suggested. "If we can find a weakness, we can strike back when the time is right." Soren considered the idea, his mind racing with possibilities. "Agreed," he said finally. "But we must act carefully. Humanity is not as weak as we believed." Back on Earth, Laura sat alone in a quiet corner of NORAD, her thoughts drifting to the future. The battle had been won, but the cost weighed heavily on her heart. She thought of the lives lost, the cities destroyed, and the sacrifices made by countless individuals. Yet amidst the sorrow, she felt a flicker of pride. Humanity had faced an overwhelming force and prevailed, proving that courage and ingenuity could overcome even the greatest odds. As dawn broke fully, casting golden light over, the sun rose over a battered but resilient earth, its light casting long shadows across the ruins of cities and the faces of those who had survived the night. In NORAD, the command center buzzed with activity as teams worked tirelessly to assess the damage and prepare for any lingering threats. Laura Bennett sat at her station, her eyes fixed on the monitors displaying the remnants of the Zorathian fleet retreating into the far reaches of space. Though the immediate danger had passed, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only a temporary reprieve. Beside her, Daniel Carter reviewed reports from field commanders, his expression grim but focused. "We've won the battle," he said quietly, "but we can't let our guard down." President Hayes nodded in agreement, his gaze steady as he addressed the room. "This is just the beginning," he declared. "We need to be ready for whatever comes next." In Los Angeles, Sergeant Megan Cole and her team continued their efforts to restore order to the devastated city. The streets were slowly being cleared of debris, and civilians began to emerge from shelters, their faces filled with a mixture of relief and sorrow. Megan moved among them, offering reassurance and guidance wherever she could. She stopped to speak with a young boy clutching a tattered blanket, his wide eyes searching hers for answers. "It's going to be okay," she told him gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. Behind her, Alex worked alongside other soldiers to distribute food and water, his earlier nerves replaced by a quiet determination. Though exhausted, Megan felt a flicker of hope as she watched communities come together to rebuild. Meanwhile, Emily Dawson and Ryan Mitchell patrolled the skies, their jets cutting through the morning air with precision and purpose. The horizon stretched endlessly before them, dotted with patches of smoke rising from distant cities. Their mission was simple: ensure no alien forces remained hidden within Earth's atmosphere. As they scanned the landscape below, Emily's thoughts drifted to the events of the past hours. They had fought against overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, but the cost had been immense. Homes destroyed, lives lost, families torn apart. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was resilience. Humanity had stood united, proving that even in the face of extinction, they would not back down. Back aboard one of the surviving Zorathian ships, Lieutenant Soren convened a meeting with his crew. The mood was somber, the weight of their failure hanging heavily in the air. "We underestimated them," Soren admitted, his voice tinged with frustration and regret. "But we cannot return to the Empire empty-handed." One of his officers spoke up hesitantly, suggesting they gather intelligence on Earth's defenses while regrouping in a nearby star system. "If we can find a weakness, we can strike back when the time is right," the officer added. Soren nodded, slowly, his mind racing with possibilities. "Agreed," he said finally, "but we must act carefully. Humanity is stronger than we thought." On Earth, preparations for the future intensified. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock to repair and upgrade defense systems, ensuring they were ready for another attack. Drones and satellites were refitted with enhanced capabilities, while fighter jets underwent modifications to improve speed and maneuverability. Laura and her team analyzed data collected during the battle, identifying patterns in the aliens' tactics and weaknesses in their technology. "If they come back, we'll know how to fight them," Laura said confidently, though her voice carried an undertone of caution. Daniel stood beside her, his arms crossed as he studied the schematics of Project Titan. "And if Titan needs to be used again, we'll make sure it's more efficient," he added. "But sparingly. We can't risk destabilizing the planet." In Washington, President Hayes addressed the nation, his words broadcast across every available channel. "Today, humanity has proven that it will not bow to tyranny or fear," he began, his tone measured but powerful. "We have faced an enemy unlike any we've known before, and we have prevailed. But this victory does not mean the end of our struggle. It means we must remain vigilant, united, and prepared to defend what is ours." His speech resonated deeply with people around the globe, inspiring acts of solidarity and determination. Communities rallied together, pooling resources and sharing. stories of survival. Social media lit up with messages of hope, reminding everyone that even in the darkest moments, humanity could shine brightest. As the day wore on, Megan and her team completed their tasks in Los Angeles, securing the area and ensuring civilians were safe. Exhausted but proud, Megan gathered her soldiers for a final briefing. "You've done incredible work," she told them, her voice filled with pride. "But this isn't over. If they come back, we'll be ready." Her words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement. Nearby, Alex approached her, his face flushed with emotion. "Thank you," he said simply. Megan smiled faintly, recognizing the gratitude in his eyes. "You earned it," she replied. "Now get some rest. Tomorrow's another day." Emily and Ryan returned to their base, greeted by cheers from ground crews and fellow pilots. Despite their fatigue, they joined their comrades in debriefings, sharing insights and strategies for future engagements. As they sat together later, sipping coffee in the mess hall, Emily glanced at Ryan thoughtfully. "Do you think this is the end?" she asked softly. Ryan shook his head, his expression serious. "No," he replied. "But we've shown them what we're made of. If they come back, we'll be ready." Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we keep training, keep improving," she said firmly. "Because this isn't just about us. It's about everyone down there." In the depths of Antarctica, engineers conducted maintenance on Project Titan, ensuring it remained operational should the need arise. Laura monitored their progress remotely, her mind already turning to ways the weapon could be improved without risking catastrophic side effects. "We've pushed the limits once," she muttered to herself. "Next time we'll push further." Nearby, technicians ran simulations, testing various scenarios to identify potential vulnerabilities. Though the weapon had proven effective, Laura knew relying on it alone was a gamble she couldn't afford to take. As night fell once more, Earth settled into an uneasy calm. Fires still burned in some areas, and the scars of battle remained visible across the landscape. Yet, amidst the devastation, there was a sense of unity and purpose. Civilians helped one another rebuild, sharing food, shelter, and stories of courage. Soldiers stood watch, their weapons at the ready, but their hearts filled with hope. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, driven by the knowledge that humanity's survival depended on their ingenuity. In NORAD, President Hayes placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, his expression thoughtful. "You've done well," he said quietly. "But this isn't over yet." Daniel nodded, his eyes fixed on the monitors displaying the remnants of the Zorathian fleet drifting farther into space. "No, sir," he replied. "It's just the beginning." Laura joined them, her gaze steady as she stared at the screens. "They'll be back," she said softly. "And when they are, we'll be waiting." President Hayes turned to face her, his voice firm but reassuring. "Then let's make sure we're ready," he said. "For Earth, for humanity, for everything we hold dear." Far away, aboard the surviving Zorathian ship, Lieutenant Sorin gazed out at the stars, his mind consumed by thoughts of revenge. He clenched his fists tightly, vowing silently to return stronger and more prepared. Unbeknownst to him, a small escape pod detached from the vessel, drifting silently into the void. Inside, General Cale Vorn lay unconscious, his body battered, but alive. His presence was unknown to both his own people and humanity, a shadowy figure destined to play a role in the battles yet to come. For now, Earth stood victorious, its people united by shared sacrifice and unwavering determination. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength, its resilience, and its refusal to yield. And though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, one truth remained clear. Earth was no longer just a target. It was a fortress.